Minecraft Dungeon is arguably the greatest Minecraft spin-off ever made, and now that development has officially wrapped up, we finally have the chance to experience the ultimate 100% playthrough. We're talking 104 achievements, over 60 hours of hardcore grinding, and 37 pages of deep lore and story content. I've conquered every single DLC, explored every hidden location, uncovered every secret room, and climbed through hundreds of tower floors, just to find out what it really takes to 100% complete this game. And today, I'm going to share that entire journey with you. This massive journey started where all great stories do, creating a new character. For whatever reason, the devs never gave us the option to import our actual Minecraft skins, leaving us stuck with the standard presets. But with a quick workaround using a converter site called DiocoCraft and the custom skin loader mod, I managed to get my own custom skin into the game. Armed with just a basic sword, I set off to save a village from an archaeologer's raid. This is basically your standard tutorial level to get you used to the controls, give you a bow, and show you the ropes. Speaking of secrets, here is a quick fun fact. There is a lonely house near the coast with closed doors. If you actually beat the game and come back to this tutorial level, those doors will be open and you'll find a hidden obsidian chest inside. It has nothing to do with the achievement, but it's a pretty cool detail. But this exact location hides a pretty weird Easter egg, which actually ties into an achievement. Right by that house, there is 3 dandelions. If you stand on them for about 10 seconds, a hidden button pops up. If you hit that one, then the hunt begins for the other 3. The next spot is by the skeleton tower, but don't press it yet. Instead, after the first archaeologer ambush, I found the next set of dandelions and revealed the 3rd button. But again, leave it alone for now. The final button is hidden right below the camp area, marked by just a single dandelion. Once this one spawns, hit it, then backtrack and press the one by the skeleton tower, and finally the one right after the pillager's ambush. Why this exact order? Nobody has a clue. Pure video game logic. But once all 4 buttons are activated, you have to run all the way back to the very start of the map. You'll notice that the background music completely cuts out, and all you can hear is the sound of the ocean waves. When you reach the start, turn down this little side path. It looks like a dead end, but if you do a quick roll over the gap, you can actually reach the opposite shore. Right there, I found my first fancy chest, and popping it open unlocked the fancy that achievement. But walking just a bit further down, the dog triggered the actual button puzzle achievement, the eponymous squid. Suddenly, a giant glowing squid and a bunch of smaller ones breached the surface. Tropical beach music kicked in, and fireworks started going off right above my head. I guess that explains why the tutorial is called Squid Coast. You can honestly just chill here as long as you want, having a little dance party with the squids. After the squid party warped up, I headed for the exit. Since I had already cleared out all the enemies while hunting for dandelions, it was just a quiet walk to the end of the level. Finishing the tutorial unlocked the Happy Camper achievement and gave me access to the player camp, which becomes your main hub for the rest of the game. Right now though, it's looking pretty sad. There are no merchants, the house is completely empty, and it's just super bare bones. I clearly had some upgrading to do. Wasting no time, I jumped straight into the first real mission, Creeper Woods. As the name suggests, this place is absolutely crawling with zombies, skeletons, and tons of creepers just waiting to blow up everything inside, including their own allies. While hacking my way through the horde, the wooden sword achievement popped for the killing 50 mobs. Sounds like a lot, right? Well, for an RPG like this, 50 kills is basically a drop in the bucket. Just to put things in perspective, later in the game there is literally an achievement that forces you to kill 1000 specific enemies using one specific weapon. So yeah, 50 is just a warm-up. We'll get to that 1000 kill grind near the end of the video though. For now, while exploring the woods, I stumble upon a strange entrance with a fancy chest nearby. At first, it looked like just another sub-dungeon cave, but deeper inside, I found an arena filled with mysterious purple blocks. The second I stepped in, the door slammed shut and a boss spawned. The spiked eye. The catch was that this thing was enchanted with sharpness and thorns, so while it wasn't exactly a raid boss, it definitely kept on my toes. Once I took it down, it dropped an Eye of Ender, which I tucked away for later. A bit further ahead, I found the entrance to a crypt. It looked impossible to open at first, but after stepping on a hidden pressure plate, the path cleared. Inside, I found a pedestal with a map for a secret location, Creepy Crypt. As it turns out, some levels in this game can only be unlocked by finding these hidden maps. There are plenty of sub-dungeons like this, including another one nearby shaped like a giant creeper face. I was immediately swarmed by a mob of creepers inside, but I cleared them out and found something way more important: a captured village merchant. Of course, I rescued him. No villager gets left behind on my watch. But he wasn't the only one in trouble. I found a pillager caravan nearby that had stopped for rest. Big mistake. I wiped them out, freed 5 more villagers from their cages, and headed for the exit. This unlocked the Out of the Woods achievement. And finally, I wasn't alone in the camp anymore. My new merchant friend was there to greet me, though his shop was pretty bare bones for now. Only 2 random items for sale. To unlock more slots, I need to keep finding and rescuing more villagers scattered across the world. My next stop was the swamp, specifically a level called Soggy Swamp. Honestly, this place is pretty miserable. It's crawling with witches who love nothing more than spamming poison potions at you. They're fast, they're annoying, and it never stops raining. The main objective here is to sabotage the Archaeologer's potion supply. About halfway through the level, I had to take out 5 cauldrons filled with a nasty pink brew. Right after that, I stumbled into another strange cave that lead deep underground. I found the chest with some emeralds inside, which pushed my total over the 1000 mark, instantly unlocking the Cha-Ching achievement. To my surprise, the cave path led me straight to another Ender Sand. This one was called Blight Eye. If you look closely, you can even actually see the Eye of Ender embedded in its chest. I took it down, grabbed the eye, and headed back out. But the cave wasn't done with me yet. Further in, I run into classic mini-boss, the Enderman. Now, weirdly enough, these guys don't drop ender pearls in this game, and believe me or not, you can actually hit them with arrows, which feels totally illegal if you played regular Minecraft. After leaving the first cave, I followed the path to another entrance, but to my surprise, it was locked. To open the gate, I had to hit a pressure plate, but there was one problem. The plate was on the other side. I honestly thought my game was bugged. I eventually managed to trigger it and get inside to grab the secret map for Soggy Cave, but then I hit another wall. There was a huge gap I just couldn't jump across. As it turns out, I had accidentally entered the arena from the back. I had to backtrack, enter the cave the proper way, survive an Archaeologer ambush, and only then could I claim the map and exit through the same pressure plate wall. Hey, mistakes happen. Finally, I reached the end of the level where the Archaeologer was waiting to summon the big bad, the corrupted cauldron. On higher difficulties, this thing is a nightmare, but for now, it wasn't too bad. It consistently spits out pink slimes that snipe you from a distance, while pillagers and husks swarm the arena. I got a pretty hilarious spawn though, a pack of chicken jockeys. But not just one, there were 6 of them at once. After smashing the cauldron and clearing the gate, I rescued another merchant, the gift dropper. Now, if you're playing solo, he is not very useful, but for co-op, he's great for sending gear to your friends for a few emeralds. And don't worry about breaking the game. The devs thought ahead. If you send a high-level item to a low-level friend, the gear automatically scales down to match their power level and vice versa. It's a pretty smart system, and gifted items even got a unique icon so you don't forget where they came from. I should also mention that while I was greeting through the campaign, I started leveling up the seasonal adventure, which is basically the game's version of a battle pass. You've got an adventure hub where task resets every week. By knocking this out and slaying bosses, you earn adventure points to unlock rewards like gold, emeralds, and fancy cosmetics. There are 3 seasons in total, each with 50 levels to climb. I'll be tackling the seasonal achievement as we go, but for now I was just slowly chipping away at the ranks. That was until I discovered a little trick that made the whole process way faster, but we'll save that for later. Next up, Pumpkin Pastures. This used to be a thriving coastal village, but the illagers left it in ruins. The pumpkin fields are scorched, the villagers in the chains, and it's just total chaos. To keep up with the rising difficulty, I finally maxed out the enchantment on my sword to tier 3, which triggered the Work Like a Charm achievement. A quick heads up on how gear works here. Weapon, armor, and artifacts aren't just crafted, they're found. You're looking for loot drops from enemies, standard chest, or the much rarer obsidian chests. If you're lucky, you might even stumble upon top-tier gear just lying hidden on the map. I should also mention that the power of your gear depends on the difficulty level you're playing on: normal, adventure or apocalypse. Each one unlocks only after you defeat the arc villager on the previous setting. It's a standard practice, no need to reinvent the wheel, but basically higher difficulty means much better loot. Weapons and armor also come with different rarities and enchantments. The rarer the item, the more potential it has. Standard enchants cost 1, 2 and 3 points to max out, while powerful ones are a bit pricier at 2, 3 and 4 points per tier. Artifacts are a bit different, they can be enchanted, so their effectiveness is all about their power level and rarity. Every time you level up, you get an enchantment point, and don't worry about being locked in. If you salvage your gear, you get every single point back, so you're free to experiment. But let's get back to pumpkin pastures. Visually, this level is great, it has a cozy autumn vibe, but the enemies won't let you relax. This is where we first run into geomancers. These guys are incredibly annoying. They summon stone pillars from the ground that blocks your path, or even worse, explode right in your face. Pushing to the docks, I found the sheep you can actually board. To my surprise, I found another captive inside, the mystery merchant. Naturally, I rescued him from the illager's clutches. Right after that, I pushed forward and the path led me to another mysterious cave, the old town hall. Unsurprisingly, there were no villagers left to save here, just a swarm of monsters. But as I explored deeper into the hole, I stumbled upon a hidden passage that led me, you guessed it, to another Anderson. This one named the Savage Eye. This fight was no joke. I actually had to rely on my trusty pet wolf, summoned by the Tasty Bot artifact, to take some of the heat off me. It was a close call. I was on the verge of death at one point, but I managed to take him down and climb his eye. One thing's to note, this overworld location with the Anderson are the only places you'll find the void blocks. They're these purple blocks that apply a void effect, which acts as a damage multiplier for any hits you take. If you're patient enough to stand in it for a really long time, the multiplayer can actually stack all the way up to level 999. Naturally, it starts to tick away at your health, but if you drop a totem of regeneration, you can out-heal the damage. Once I hit that 999 stack and let the timer runs out, I unlock the avoidable achievement. Aside from the cozy autumn vibes, I really appreciate the effort the designers put into the environment here. The houses in pumpkin pastures use dry grass blocks, which is a nice touch that distinguishes this area from the main village. It gives the whole place a unique rustic feel that actually looks quite good. Eventually, I made it to the heart of the village and rang the main bell. The pillagers wasted no time showing up to stop me, but I cleared them out in record time. Then it was the evoker's turn. According to the lore, this isn't just any ordinary evoker, but I'll be diving deep into their backstory in a separate video, so stay tuned for that. I took them down without much of a struggle, and with the village saved, I unlocked the plot thickness achievement for the finishing both the Soggy Swamp and Pumpkin Pastures. Now, at the end of every successful mission, you get a reward chest. This time, I pulled the Light Feather artifact. This thing lets you perform a high jump, and it's a key to unlock the staff-only achievement back at the camp. Basically, I had to channel my inner parkour master. I headed over the adventure tower, hopped onto the steps, and used the feather to reach the railing. From there, it was a leap to the roof, then the wall, and finally a drop down onto the lower roof where you can see hidden entrance. Inside, it's a pretty cool Easter egg. There is no loot or chest, but you find the tower keeper's private quarters. It's got 3 beds, their freshly laundered ropes, and some sketchy acid green liquid leaking out of the barrel. It's a weird little secret area, but we'll talk more about the tower and its mysterious keepers later on. The next stop on the map was Cacti Canyon. To be honest, I am not exactly a fan of this level aesthetic. Visually, it's a bit dry, and gameplay-wise, it's more of the same. Hundreds of mobs swarming you while you slowly grind for XP. There's one spot where thousands of pillagers ambush you all at once, and I actually ended up dying there. But luckily, if you're playing solo, the game gives you 3 lives represented by totems of Undying. Just a heads up, these aren't artifacts you have to find, they're just the default respawn mechanic. About halfway through, I veered off to the left and found some old fortress ruins. This led me to the lower section of a desert temple, where, you guessed it, more pillagers were waiting. But the real prize was another Anderson called the Beating Eye. Even though he was technically stronger than the last one, I found him much easier to take down. After grabbing the Ender Eye, I officially hit level 10 and unlocked this crappy scout achievement. Now, level 10 might sound like a milestone, but trust me, in the grand scheme of this game, it's a total drop in the bucket. For the rest of the mission, it was just a loop of slaying pillagers and activating beacons. In this game, beacons don't give you buffs like in vanilla Minecraft, they're basically just glorified switches to lower bridges. I even got jumped by a group of skeleton horsemen, which was a cool distraction, but I cleared them out pretty quickly. Finally, right before the exit, I rescued another trapped merchant and stepped through the temple doors to warp up the level. Back at camp, I realized I had another easy achievement sitting right in front of me, the storage chest. This chest lets you stash away artifacts and gear, holding up to 300 items at a time. I decided to unequip absolutely everything and just dump it all in there. It came out to exactly 50 items, which immediately unlocked the How Does It All Fit achievement. Fun fact, your actual character inventory caps out at 300 slots too. After finishing about half of the main story, I decided to shift my focus over the tower. This is an incredibly mysterious and magical place where you start from the bottom and climb your way to the peak. The number of floors varies, usually between 20 and 30, and the layout resets once a week. The catch? You enter with zero equipment. After clearing each floor of its random enemies, you get to pick one piece of gear to build your loadout. You'll face several bosses along the way, with the toughest one waiting for you on the roof. If you survive, the tower keeper rewards with the choice of 3 pieces of gilded gear. You also meet 3 specific NPCs during your climb: the Power Smith to boost your item power, the Unique Smith to upgrade the gear to unique status, and the Guildsmith to add that extra gilded enchantment. That's the tower in a nutshell. It's full of RNG, but it's where some of the hardest achievements live. During my run, I cleared the 6th floor and picked up the Golem Kit artifact. As soon as I hit the 7th floor, I summoned the Iron Golem, which triggered the A Friend in Need achievement. To pull this off, you need to summon a wolf using the Tasty Bone, a llama with the Wonderful Wheat, and the Golem at least once. Since I'd already used the others earlier, the Golem was the final piece of the puzzle. These pets are lifesavers in combat, unlike the cosmetic pets that just follow you around for looks. The tower levels are pulled from all over the game, including biomes you might not have visited yet. For me, floor 10 was aquatic. You can breathe normally down there. You have to refill your air in bubble columns. I took this opportunity to stand in a column for about 5 minutes, which unlocked the secret achievement Feeling Bubbly. It's not hard, just a bit of a test of patience. As I climbed higher, my options for gear expanded. By the time I cleared the 12th floor, I had finally equipped an artifact, armor, a melee weapon, and a ranged weapon all at once. This completed the Fashionable Climber achievement for having every gear type equipped in a single tower run. Hey, we're doing pretty well! I already mentioned the different tower blacksmiths, and since I used the help of each one during my run, I unlocked the Meet and Greet achievement. It's pretty straightforward, but there is actually a reverse version of this achievement that we'll cover a bit later. Now that I've reached the final boss of the tower, I want to share the trick that saved me a massive amount of time. Your seasonal adventure rank increases significantly when you kill bosses, whether they are from regular levels or the tower. Since the tower is packed with them, it's the perfect place to farm. Here's how the exploit works. After defeating the final boss, I used the statue to teleport back to the camp. Then I returned to the tower, using the mechanic that lets you resume your progress, and only then did a step through the exit portal. The keeper will show up and offer you a choice of 3 items. If you close the game right there and reopen it, you'll find yourself back on that same reward screen. But if you open the map and re-enter the tower instead of picking an item, the game logic trips up. It thinks you just replay the top floor, offering you new rewards at a higher level and counting the final boss as a defeated once again. In other words, this simple trick lets you skyrocket the power level of your gear and farm adventure points for seasonal events way faster than usual. This exploit has been in the game for a long time, and since the developers haven't patched it out, there is no reason not to take advantage of it. Thanks to this, I managed to snag a level 94 fire band axe, which made the rest of my run a breeze. I also jumped from level 7 all the way to the level 16 in a seasonal event. Once I hit level 10, I unlocked the Well-Seasoned achievement. As I mentioned, seasonal adventures mostly reward you with cosmetics, stuff like emotes, pets and hero skins, but occasionally you'll get emeralds and gold. By this point, I'd been hoarding emeralds from mobs, chests and those decorated pots, but I hadn't spent much yet. After claiming another reward from the seasonal track, I finally hit the 5,000 emerald milestone, triggering the Oh Shiny achievement. I had to agree, though the name sounds like it belongs to an achievement for gold, not green gems, but I'll take the trophy anyway. Continuing with the story, I eventually found myself in the redstone mines. This is easily one of my favorite locations. It feels cozy and the visual design is just stunning. My mission here was to liberate the villagers from their chains and the grueling slave labor of mining redstone. This turned out to be the perfect spot to hunt for my next achievement, Blast Radius. To get it, you need to take out at least 10 monsters at once with a single TNT charge. My first 2 attempts were total fails. It's actually surprisingly hard to herd a massive crowd like that together without dying in the process, but on the 3rd try I nailed it. 1,000 zombies said goodbye to life? Death? Are zombies even technically alive? Either way, they were gone, and the achievement was mine. Since this level is packed with captured villagers, everyone I rescued counted towards my merchant side quest back at the camp, so clearing these mines was a win-win. By the time I'd hacked my way through the endless wave of pillagers, creepers and spiders, my total kill count surged past 2,500. This triggered the Diamond Sword achievement. Think that sounds like a lot? Trust me, it's still just a drop in the ocean compared to what's coming. It's in the mines where we officially encountered the redstone golem for the first time, at least in the story. I'd actually already scrapped a few in the tower, but this was the first one that felt canon. Once the golem was down, I found another captured villagers right before the exit, the blacksmith. Saving him and finishing the level triggered the Build on Sand, Set in Stone achievement, which you get for clearing both Cacti Canyon and the redstone mines. But that wasn't the only trophy I grabbed. I also completed Soul last season. You have to finish a level while equipped with a cape, a pet, an emote and flare, all from a previous season's event. That's exactly why I was grinding all those seasonal ranks earlier. I needed to unlock every item on the list, switch my active season to the second one, and then cross the finish line. Was it a lot of work for one achievement? Absolutely. Was it worth it? Definitely. As a cherry on the top, my end of level chest dropped a rare Totem of Casting, which is going to be incredibly useful for my build. Back at camp, the blacksmith was ready to work, but like the others, he is a bit of a fixer-upper. His forge stays in ruins until you defeat the archaeologer on the higher difficulties to unlock all 3 upgrade slots. For now, I handed him my new totem for an upgrade. I just need to clear 3 missions and its power level would get a nice boost. But the rewards didn't stop there. With 5 merchants already in my camp, my run through the redstone mines also cleared a weekly seasonal task, bumping me up another level in the second seasonal adventure. This unlocked a fresh batch of rewards, emotes, emeralds, and most importantly, my first 10 gold ingots. As soon as that goal hit my inventory, the final merchant arrived, the Piglin. He is the key to the getting gilded gear and unlock the Ancient Hunt, which is tied to the rarest achievement in the game, Homecoming. We'll get to that later, but for now, with all 6 merchants officially settled in, I unlocked the local source of the achievement. Finally, the camp felt alive with everyone ready to trade. With a real sense of accomplishment, I headed to the next location, the Desert Temple. If you're wondering how you can build an entire level out of vanilla Desert Temple, just know this isn't the small pyramid you used to. It's a massive sprawling labyrinth filled with the hidden passages and an overwhelming number of monsters. This is where we met a new incredibly annoying mob, the Skeleton Vanguard. These guys are real jerks. They carry broadswords with a massive attack range and they have shields that negate your first arrow strike. Taking them down requires a lot more patience than your average zombie. As I pushed deeper into the temple, I hit another fork in the road. I was half expecting another ender cave, but it turned out to be something much more straightforward. A sealed room where I had to activate 2 beacons. Once they were lit, they triggered a mechanism to raise a bridge, allowing me to claim the secret map for the lower temple. This area also introduced me to necromancers. While they aren't the toughest enemies one-on-one, you have to make them your top priority. If you don't take them out immediately, they'll just keep summoning an endless horde of undead until you're completely overwhelmed. Eventually, I stumble upon the entrance to a new sub-dungeon. The path spiraled deep underground into a confusing labyrinth filled with traps. I actually lost a life there. Those moving walls are no joke. Trying to time the gap while dodging everything else was surprisingly difficult, and I paid the price for a split-second mistake. The traps in this place were everywhere. Sliding spears, swinging blades, and narrow ledges ledges overhang in the void. Despite the chaos, I pushed through to the final chamber where I was met by another undercent, the Reaping Eye. Thanks to the high-level weapon I snatched from the tower, the battle was a total piece of cake. I claimed his ender eye and moved on. Once I made it back out of the caves, I headed straight for the Desert Temple final boss, the Fallen King, the Nameless One. He is a fascinating character from a lore perspective, and we'll definitely dive into his backstory in my full plot analysis video. You might think the Nameless One is just a glorified necromancer, but his stuff makes him a completely different beast. Not only is he shielded by a phalanx of vanguards, but he also summons multiple clones of himself that rain down magical projectiles. To my surprise, he actually managed to take me out once. It was a bit of shock given my gear, but I stayed focused, finishing him off and escaped the temple with another victory under my belt. Right after my victory, I headed back into the tower to hunt for some better armor and keep grinding my way through the third seasonal adventure. I was specifically aiming for the Horse mode. Yes, that's a real thing, and yes, it's required for an achievement. Since I already had the Redstone Monstrosity pet equipped for my earlier seasonal grind, I decided to knock out the Mine is Cuter Than Yours achievement. To get it, you just have to have the pet active while you're killing a full-size Redstone Monstrosity. Likely, one was conventionally waiting for me on the 5th floor of the tower. It was a total piece of cake. With my new armor locked in, I continued the story in the Fairy Forge. This is where the Illagers under the Archaeologers command manufacture those massive monstrosities. Right at the entrance, you can see a failed golem. See, they use special diamond molds filled with redstone, and the Archaeologers' Orb of Dominance breathed life into them. But clearly, this is one didn't quite make the cut. My mission was to sabotage the forge and cut off the redstone supply. As soon as I reached the heart of the level, I started overloading the explosive mechanisms. Why are they even there? Well, it's just standard practice, isn't it? An evil genius can build a machine to enslave the world without including an obvious self-destruct button. It's practically the first rule in the Heinz Doofenshmirtz handbook. Of course, blowing up the forge wasn't enough, so I pushed deeper into the facility. I took my time clearing out the Illagers, specifically focusing on the enchanted ones. As we've seen, enemies in this game can be buffed with enchantments just like the player. There is even a dedicated mob called the Enchanter. They're pretty weak on their own, but they can turn a basic enemy into a massive threat in a second. Usually, you want to kill the Enchanter first, but my goal was actually the opposite. I wanted them to buff as many mobs as possible, because I needed to take down 50 enchanted enemies to unlock the Break the Spell achievement. Once I was done, I finally reached the end of the forge for a face-to-face showdown with the Redstone Monstrosity. This is technically where the story intended for us to meet for the first time. It's a formidable boss that constantly summons redstone cubes to swarm you, so the best strategy is to lure it toward the redstone cores that, once again, someone was kind enough to leave lying around. Needless to say, the battle ended with another victory for me. Without wasting any time, I set off my next quest, the High Black Holes. This is the penultimate level of the main story, and you can really feel the difficulty spike as we close in on the Archaeologer. The objective here? To crush his victory party. Interestingly, this location features a massive stone sculpture depicting the Archaeologer defeating the Ender Dragon. It's a bit of a mystery, honestly, because the dragon is never mentioned elsewhere in the game, and we never actually get to fight it. It's clearly just part of his propaganda. Right at the start of the level, I spotted a staircase with a hidden passage nearby. You can trigger it by interacting with the shield on the wall to the left. Inside this secret room, I picked up the map for the Underhouse mission. But as cool as that secret is, the real challenge was meeting a new type of enemy, the Royal Guard. These guys are a serious step up from your average pillager. They're heavily armored, carry shields, and use maces with a long reach, making them the perfect frontline defenders for the castle. The Royal Guards are formidable enemies. Not only they hit like a truck with those maces, but their shields negate your first strike, even if it's heavily critical hit. You have to be extremely careful here. When you pair these guys with enchanters, the holes become an absolute nightmare. Fighting my way through the narrow corridors, I eventually made it outside, where a massive crowd of undead was waiting. The sheer number of them was unimaginable, but I managed to cut my way through the horde. Most importantly, I found and rescued the final imprisoned merchant. With them free and headed back to my camp, the merchant rooster was finally complete, and I was one step closer to taking down the Archaeologer for good. The most interesting part happens once you head back inside, where you run into pillagers' chefs. They're identical to the standard mobs, just with little chef's heads on their heads. My objective was simple: ruin the dinner party by smashing the banquet tables. Needless to say, they were pretty enraged. I didn't stick around to the chat, I slipped away and found another entrance to the dungeons. Navigating through the crowd of guards and a tangled maze of food shelves, I finally came face to face with the final Endercent of the overworld, the Ravenous Eye. After a quick victory, he dropped the final Ender Eye. We're going to need those very soon. I returned to the main hall to finish the job, smashing every food table in sight. My heart was breaking a little. I had to see good food go to waste, but it was the only way to ruin the archaeologer's celebration. By the way, keep an eye out for a very cleverly placed obsidian chest in this area. It's a total trap. The second you open it, a squad of crossbow-wielding pillagers spawns out of nowhere to ambush you. It's incredibly dangerous and can end your run in seconds. Just as I reached my goal, Archie, the main villain himself, managed to slip away right under my nose, leaving me to deal with his reinforcements. I cleared the ambush, finished the level, and unlocked the High and Dry achievement. After that warm welcome, it was time to hit the final destination, the Obsidian Pinnacle. This is it, the showdown with the archaeologer. Believe me, this level is brutal. It's crawling with royal guards and the toughest pillagers in the game. But the gameplay itself is a blast. You're launching off pistons and taking down redstone golems in a race to the top of the tower. Near the very end of the mission, you can spot something truly massive, a colossal titan known as Obsidian Monstrosity. It's clear Archie didn't have enough time to finish this one, so you can't actually fight it in the main game. However, if you ever find a Minecraft Dungeons arcade machine, you can face off against it there. In that version, you actually get to see Archie fly in and breathing life into the beast using the Orb of Dominance. It's a cool bit of crossover lore that most players never get to see. When I finally reached the summit, the archaeologer had nowhere left to run. The final battle was on. The fight unfolded into two stages. First, I had to take down Archie himself, but once he fell, his true form emerged, the Heart of Ender. It was a chaotic fight, with the boss spewing Ender essence everywhere, but I held my ground and destroyed it. For my efforts, the game rewarded me with the Save the Overworld achievement. Archie survived the encounter, but the Orb of Dominance was shattered. Its corrupted shards scattered across the world and, more importantly, leaked into every other dimension. At this point, the main story was officially over, and the path ahead leads into the paid DLCs. But for me, the adventure was just getting started. Armed with my upgraded totem of casting, I was ready to head toward an abandoned fortress in search of new challenges. But as I was leaving, I noticed a new addition to the camp, a wolf. I walked over, gave him a well-deserved pat on the head, and unlocked the Pet the Dog achievement. Because, let's be honest, you can't save the world and not pet the dog. Just as I was about to leave, I caught something moving out of the corner of my eye. A set of jumping pistons had appeared right in the middle of my camp. Curiosity got the better of me, so I went to investigate. Tucked away at the top, I found a silver chest stuffed with emeralds, a nice little bonus. Right across from the chest was a secret entrance leading to the Great Hall. I pulled the lever to lower a bridge, creating a shortcut for future visits, and stepped inside to find a mysterious wall covered with ancient runes. To open this door, you have to backtrack through the main levels and trigger the hidden mechanisms. I started by fast traveling to the Creeper Woods. Not far from the pillager caravan, I found a concealed stone slab. Activating it revealed a hidden chamber containing the first of 11 runes. While I was sprinting through the woods, I actually popped the passive-aggressive achievement by killing 50 neutral mobs. You'll find these creatures like cows and sheep in almost every level. It might feel a bit mean, but they drop food that provides a quick heal, so it's actually a pretty useful tactic when you're in pinch. Deciding to save the rune hunt for later, I set my sights on a new destination, the Stronghold. Unlike the ruins you find in vanilla Minecraft, the Stronghold here is far from abandoned. The level is absolutely massive, gigantic really, and it's packed with secrets, most of which involve complex door mechanisms and hunting down missing keys. Right at the heart of the location sits the Ender Portal. It was missing 6 eyes of Ender, which had been stolen and scattered by the Endercent to prevent anyone from following the true evil into their realm. But since I'd already tracked down every last eye, I stepped up and placed them back into the portal frames. The second the portal ignited, I caught my first glimpse of the surreal floating expanses of the end dimension. As Ender corrupted illagers began to swarm, I finally saw it, the primal evil I was destined to fight. The real battle was just the beginning. Instead of jumping straight through the portal, I decided to stick around and explore the Stronghold a bit further. After all, placing those eyes had finally unlocked the massive gates that were blocking my path. As I mentioned before, neutral mobs drop food, but you can also find supplies on hostile mobs and in chests. Even when my health was full, I made a point to scarf down every piece of food I found. After devouring over 200 items, I finally popped the Om Nom Nom achievement. Honestly, it felt like I'd eaten way more than that, but I guess the game's counter doesn't lie. This location is full of mysteries, and one of the biggest is hidden treasure trove. To unlock it, you have to track down and activate 5 hidden stone slabs scattered across the map. While I was hunting for them, I got caught in another ambush, and this time some strange mobs from the DLC started spawning in. It was pure chaos and I honestly couldn't tell what half of them were, but one of them dropped a warming potion. I drank it without even thinking, which created a ring of fire around me. Between that fire aura and the fire aspect enchantment on my fireband, I accidentally triggered the burning up achievement. I wasn't even planning on doing that once yet, especially not here, but I'll take it. With the mobs turned to ash, I climbed to the top of the chamber and activated the second slab. The hunt for the third slab went smoothly. I spent some time wandering the halls, clearing out every mob that crossed my path. All those skills started stacking up and I finally hit level 25. That means only one thing. I had officially unlocked the Apprentice Adventurer achievement. It was a nice little milestone to hit mid-exploration. After finishing off the remaining guards, I climbed to the higher ledge, found the third slab and clicked it into the place. Then I completely whiffed with the fourth button. My greedy eyes were so focused on a pile of decorated pots filled with emeralds that I walked right past the mechanism. I spent way too much time circling the area, wondering where on the earth it could be. I even managed to find an obsidian chest before I found the actual objective, but after a few laps I finally spotted the slab and activated it. Compared to that headache, the fifth slab was a breeze. It wasn't hidden at all. I spotted it almost immediately on the opposite side of the chamber and taped it to finish the sequence. The final button was stacked away in a pretty strange spot. As soon as I triggered it, the gate swung open and I found a group of villagers locked in cages. I made sure to free every one of them, though don't expect them to move into your camp as new merchants. At this point, we've already filled every available slot. After clearing out the final wave of creepers, I was finally able to step inside that chamber of secrets, and I didn't even need to learn personal tongue to do it. Entering the vault officially unlocked the treasure trove achievement, though calling it a trove is a bit of a stretch. There was one fancy chest, one obsidian chest, and a couple of regular ones. To be honest, I found way more obsidian chests just wandering the halls looking for the pressure plates than I did in the actual vault. It's definitely debatable whether the hunt was worth the actual payout. With the stronghold fully explored, there was nothing left to do but step through the portal. Doing so triggered it to the end achievement. I didn't stay long though. The portal isn't just a continuation of the stronghold, it's a transition to the end Wild's location. I decided to save the end for the very end. Pun absolutely intended. I should also mention one vital part of this run, the shopping. Throughout my entire playthrough, I made it a point to visit every single merchant and buy up any gear or artifacts I didn't already own. There is an achievement called I Need Them All, and it's a massive undertaking. To unlock it, you have to collect every piece of equipment and every artifact available in each world. It's no easy task. Some items have incredibly low drop rates, and others only appear on a higher difficulty levels. Because of that, checking the shops after almost every mission became a mandatory ritual for me. Speaking of variety, I headed back into the tower for another run and run into the jungle abomination on floor 14. Normally, you wouldn't face this beast until you reach the Island Realm DLC, but as I mentioned earlier, the tower is a bit of a wild card. You can encounter almost any boss from any DLC in there. The only ones off limits are the Archaeologer and the final boss. While squaring off against the boss, I decided to have a little fun and use the abomination roar mode, roaring right back at him the second he growled at me. This triggered the same to you by the achievement. I spent quite a while leveling up the second seasonal adventure specifically to unlock that emote, and the moment was finally here. Unfortunately, the boss didn't appreciate the mimicry. He stomped me into the ground. Apparently, he didn't like me mocking him. I didn't let the defeat get to me though. I jumped right back into the tower to hunt for the remaining trophies, starting with thanks but no thanks. To pull this one off, you have to complete a full tower run without using the services of 3 tower smiths. Believe me, it's a struggle. Those smiths are the the only way to keep your gear relevant as the floors get tougher. I had to take a deep breath and walk past each one without even looking their way. But as I reached the final floor, I got a surprise notification. I'd unlocked so many stairs, which marks a total of 100 floors climbed into the tower across all my runs. Waiting for me at the summit was, you guessed it, the jungle abomination again. I was down to my very last life, so I played as cautiously as possible, chipping away at his health until he finally went down. As I stepped through the exit portal, thanks but no thanks finally popped. I thought it would be a total nightmare, but I actually managed to pull it off. Once again, I decided to lean into a bit of trickery, but I missed one crucial detail. After defeating the Archaeologer, you unlock adventure difficulty, but since I had started my tower run on a default, my gear's power level stayed kept. It didn't matter much, though, because my seasonal adventure points were still stacking up. I finally hit level 22 and unlocked the horse riding mode, another essential item for my achievement hunt. With that settled, I headed back to the Island Realms to start the DLC content, beginning with the Jungle Awakens. This is essentially one of my favorite biomes in the game. You've got your classic zombies, skeletons and creepers, but with a tropical twist. Most of them can now pose on you. My goal here was to clear the level without using a single healing potion to snag a specific achievement. Believe me, that is harder than it sounds. It's not that the enemies are overwhelming, it's that hitting the potion key is pure muscle memory. It's second nature at this point. To save myself from my own reflexes, I actually went into the settings and remapped the healing key to something I wouldn't hit by accident. Luckily, the game doesn't count healing totems or food against you. Speaking of which, I finally broke out the Totem of Casting. This artifact is incredible. It runs on souls, and once activated, anyone standing in the circle gets their artifact cooldowns instantly reset. It's a complete game changer for high-intensity fights. The Dingy Jungle is absolutely crawling with mobs, especially slimes. I'm not entirely sure why there are so many of them here, but I wasn't complaining. The experience points were pouring in like water from a bucket. I took my time exploring, looting every chest I could find. While opening a perfectly ordinary chest, I was caught off guard by the More For Me achievement. I'd been under the impression that I need to open 100 fancy chests, so I'd been obsessively hunting for the rare ones. As it turns out, the game counts any chest you find. I probably shouldn't have worried about it in the first place, considering how many chests are tucked away in every corner of these levels. At one point, I ducked into another side cave, fully expecting to find another Ender Sand. The game had been predictably up until then, but it turned out to be a standard sub-dungeon filled with the usual suspects: mobs, traps, and rivers of lava. At the very end, I crossed a rune-covered bridge where yet another chest was waiting for me. No boss this time, just more loot for the collection. Just as I was nearing the end of the level, I took a detour and stumbled upon a truly mysterious sight: the massive skeletal remains of some giant creature. I can even begin to imagine what it was. Maybe some kind of ancient kaiju panda? It certainly looked the part, especially since there was a pedestal nearby that looked like it belonged to a giant. More importantly, hidden among the bones was the map for the secret mission that I'll definitely be exploring later. To wrap up the level and make my escape, I had to solve a straightforward puzzle. The goal was to match the stone faces on a central gate to the statues hidden on either side of the arena. You just have to climb the steps, memorize the expression of the statue's face, and then return to the mechanism to toggle it until it matches. After repeating the process for the second statue, the gates finally opened. I successfully finished the mission without touching my healing potion even once, officially earning the survival skills achievement. Remapping the key was definitely the right call. My next stop was the Panda Plateau, the secret mission I just unlocked. The name is spot on because the place is absolutely crawling with pandas. Now, technically you can hunt them for food and they won't even fight back, but our actual mission here is to rescue them. To kill two birds with one stone, or in my case to knock out two achievements at once, I equipped the Ocelot armor. In my humble opinion, it's not the best gear in the game, but it does give you a nice movement speed buff and descent damage absorption. With the armor on, my challenge was to finish the entire level without killing a single Ocelot. Because of that, I had to be extremely careful and precise with every swing of my weapon. While being careful not to hit the cats, I focused on rescuing the pandas from the clutches of the illagers. I still have no idea why they were kidnapped pandas in the first place. Maybe for a very fluffy army? Eventually, I entered the massive cave. but it wasn't an Anderson waiting for me this time. Instead, I was ambushed by the skeleton horsemen. I definitely didn't expect to see them in the middle of the jungle. I was a little caught off guard, but I remembered I had a horse riding mode equipped. Right in front of their puzzled face, I calmly mimic riding a horse, completing the same to You May 2.0 achievement. I'm pretty sure if those skeletons still had a skin, they would have looked very confused. Just like the pandas back in the cave, I made sure every last one was rescued. I'm not sure who wouldn't save them. They looked so grateful, waving goodbye as I made my exit. By finishing the mission without harming a single absolute, I knock out 2 achievements at once: Pandemonium and a leader of the pack. Easy peasy. My next goal was Elementary. Every day, daily trials appear on the map. These missions offer unique artifacts and apply both positive and negative modifiers to the level. For example, the first one I choose buffed my speed by 20% and gave my weapons a permanent knockback enchantment, but replaced every melee mob with skeletons. The second trial was much trickier. It reduced my total lives to just 1 and gave 50% of the mobs the ability to reflect my arrows back at me. To balance it out, I had a permanent max level critical hit enchantment. This was in high black holes, which is already crawling with royal guards, so things got tense fast. I actually got caught off guard by that reflection trap. I couldn't use my bow at all without nearly snipping myself. Since I hadn't unlocked the third trial tier yet, I just lowered the difficulty and cleared the first trial a second time. That was enough to pop the Daily Destroyer achievement. Later on, I returned to the jungle to delve into the next mission, the Overgrown Temple. To be honest, all 3 of these levels share a very similar vibe. The same enemies, dense greenery, and winding path everywhere. There wasn't anything wildly unexpected here, but the level design itself is fantastic. Much like the Desert Temple, this location takes the Jungle Temple aesthetic and turns it up to 11. The entire level is essentially one massive ancient ruin swallowed by nature. About halfway through, I reach a colossal, crumbling chamber with a massive gemstone pulsing in the center. To clear the way forward, I had to smash it to pieces. At the very end of the temple, the final boss was waiting for me, the Jungle Abomination. If you aren't prepared, this fight can be a real headache. He doesn't move around much, instead he stays rooted in place, spinning to track your movement. While he's pelting you with poisonous spores from a distance, he constantly summons Whisperers, which sprout those annoying poisonous flowers right under your feet. It's a total test of positioning and crowd control. The fight was tougher than I expected, and I actually went down twice. Luckily, you get 3 attempts before it's game over. Digging deep, I railed and finally brought the monsters down. I was on the verge of death again right as the level ended, but the Totem of Casting saved me at the last second. I made it out alive and secured the Abomination Domination achievement. Even though that was the final boss of the story, the jungle wasn't done with me yet. I still had one location left, Treat Up Tangle. Before heading in, I equipped the Root Rod armor. Its unique perk is that your healing potion also heals nearby allies, which is honestly pretty funny considering I play solo, but it looks the part of this level. The mission itself is basically one giant climb to the summit of a colossal tree. In my humble opinion, this is the most beautiful and unique map in the entire jungle DLC. There is just something awe-inspiring about the sheer scale of a tree that massive in Minecraft world. Throughout my entire jungle run, I've been spamming the Totem of Casting, and after the 50th use, the soul powered achievement finally popped. Seriously, if you aren't using this artifact, you're missing out. It's a total carry, especially in co-op since it refreshes everyone's cooldown at once. At the top of the tree, another boss was waiting for me, though it was a cakewalk compared to the Abomination. After finishing the mission in my Root Rod gear, I unlocked the Treetop Trespasser achievement. After sweating it out in the jungle, I decided it was time to cool off, so I headed to the Frosted Fjord. This is where we first run into the Ice Soldiers, the very same mobs that never made into vanilla Minecraft after losing the mob vote to the Glow Squid. There is actually a specific achievement related to them, but we'll get to that later. My first task here was simple: slide across the ice for a total of 500 blocks. It wasn't complicated, I just spent a few minutes skating back and forth and boom, the Smooth Operator achievement was mine. You do have to watch your step though. If you fall into the freezing water, you'll turn into an ice cube. And no, I'm not talking about the wrapper. The fjord has plenty of hidden paths, including a massive dam. At first glance, it looks like a simple pier for a shipwreck with nothing else to see, but after some clever platforming on the pistons, I found a hidden button. Pressing it causes the icy water level to drop in pretty magical way, revealing a new passage into the lower hull of the ship. Inside that hidden room, I found a map for a secret location that's going to be very useful useful later on. Not far from the shipwreck I found the cave with a fancy chest dangling from a lid. There was a rotating mechanism nearby and naturally I gave it a turn. The chest started to lower, but at the very last second someone yanked it back up and triggered an ambush. Once the monsters were dealt with, the chest didn't lower back down. Instead, it just spawned directly on the ground. A bit of a troll move by the developers, but I'll take the loot. This level also marks the first time we encountered the Illusioner. In Minecraft Dungeons, he is a full-fledged mini-boss, and he's actually really fun to fight. He creates multiple clones of himself to act as a mid-shield. While the decoys pepper you with the regular arrows, the real Illusioner hides in the back firing rockets. It can get pretty overwhelming if you don't track the real one quickly. There is no final boss at the end of the fjord, so I finished the mission without any real trouble. However, my work here wasn't done. I immediately jumped back in for a second run. Before jumping back into the fjord, I unequipped my main weapon, going completely bare-fisted, and dropped the difficulty down to the default. All of this was for a very specific achievement. I had to clear the entire level without hitting a single enemy. It sounds impossible, but with the right setup, it's actually a breeze. Lowering the difficulty doesn't avoid the achievement, and it makes surviving the mobs much easier. My strategy? Let my companions do the dirty work. I brought along my trusty llama and a hive of bees. To speed things up, I equipped the boots of swiftness for extra mobility and the wind horn to blast back any mobs that got too close. My plan was to kill two birds with one stone, by also attempting the achievement that requires to knock out 5 enemies at once with a block of ice. Since I wasn't using a weapon, this didn't interfere with my no-kill run. I thought it would be easy, just gather a crowd and drop an ice one on them. But I was wrong. It took me 7 failed attempts before I finally got the position right. On the 8th try, the chill out achievement finally popped, and I was back on the move. However, I didn't get far before I hit mandatory ambush. The gates lock shut and you can't progress until the enemy is defeated. Since the rules say no weapons, I just stepped back and let the beast and the llama handle it. I could have technically helped by punching them with my bare hands, but I didn't want to take any chances. I just stood there and waited for my animal army to finish the job. Everything was going smoothly until I dug into a cave and ran straight into a raid captain. This is a special mechanic. If you revisit a mission you've already cleared, these captains can spawn randomly. If you take them down and pick up their banner, the level difficulty spikes immediately. The modifiers are always a nightmare. In my case, 50% of all melee mobs were granted random enchantments. There is an achievement for this too. You have to complete 10 missions while carrying a raid banner, considering this the first brick in the foundation. Thankfully, the increased difficulty didn't really faze me. Since I was going for a pacifist run, I was just sprinting past everyone and avoiding combat entirely. I did have to make one last stand though. Right before the exit there was a final ambush. Once again, I stood back and let the llamas and bees handle that heavy lifting. They cleared the path without a hitch, and as I stepped through the exit, I officially unlocked the Frozen Fist achievement. Not bad for the run where I didn't even throw a punch. As a nice little bonus, completing the mission with the red banner active rewards you with an extra chest at the end, a pillager bounty. It's a great way to snag some high-tier gear for the extra trouble. My next destination was the Lost Settlement, the secret level we unlocked back in the hull of that shipwreck. To be honest, most of these secret locations are designed specifically for farming experience and gear. They're packed with a ridiculous number of mobs and high density of chests, so don't expect any groundbreaking story beats here. That said, it was still fun to explore. I found an elevator that took me up to the massive observation tower where, in classic fashion, an ambush was waiting for me. After clearing it out, I was rewarded with several fancy chests. Near the end of the mission, I encountered this strange area featuring a mysterious relic. To progress, you have to activate pressure plates to rotate the upper block clockwise until the runic symbols align. It's a bit of a shame there is no lore or even a hint about what this relic actually is, but it made for the cool set piece. I eventually cleared the stage and unlocked the Lost in the Snow achievement. The culmination of the Creeping Winter DLC brought me to the Lone Fortress, where the final boss was waiting. Honestly, the layout reminded me a lot of High Black Holes, just with much frostier atmosphere. I spent the mission fighting my way up to the summit, dealing with hordes of icy enemies trying to overwhelm me. I didn't skip a single map on my way up. I was hoarding every bit of experience to save up for enchantments, and those skills were exactly what I needed to bridge the gap. Waiting for me at the heart of the fortress was the Wretched Wraith. This boss is a nightmare for a few reasons. He teleports constantly, summons waves of reinforcements, and can shield himself while firing off pink projectiles. However, there is a trick. If you blast him down with enough damage, you can actually stun him. When he's stunned, he crawled falls to the ground. That crown is the source of his power, and attacking it directly lets you deal massive bonus damage. I managed to take him down, and the experience from the kill was the perfect cherry on the top. As soon as my hotbar hit exactly level 50, the Expert Explorer achievement popped, but the notification didn't stop there. Completing the mission also secured the Lone Champion achievement. That officially brings us to 52 achievements, which is exactly the halfway point of the entire game. But as much as I'd like to celebrate, there is no time to relax. Instead of jumping into a new DLC immediately, I headed back to the tower to grind some seasonal adventure points and hunt for higher tier gear. I wasn't going to make the same mistake twice, so I made sure to crank the difficulty up to adventure. The tower layout was still the same, so there weren't any surprise waiting for me. And once I toppled the final boss, I officially unlocked the Tower Power achievement for clearing a run on adventure difficulty. With some fresh gear in my inventory, I turned my attention back to the rune hunt. I needed to track down the remaining symbols to finally unlock the secret room in the camp. My first stop was Pumpkin Pastures. The rune here is hidden right near the start of the map, tucked away by the first set of castle ruins. If you look at the far right wall, you'll find a stack of crates. Behind them is a hidden pressure plate that opens the secret passage. You might wondering why I didn't just grab this during my first playthrough. The answer is simple. Those pressure plates literally don't exist until you defeat an archaeologer at least once. The game forces you to become a true hero before it lets you in on its biggest secrets. The rune in Obsidian Pinnacle is actually tucked away in a bit of a misleading spot. Despite the name, it's not at the very peak. Towards the end of the mission, you have to cut through a castle interior to reach the final ascent. Just before the exit, you'll find a large library or living room area with a small bookstand in the center. Hidden behind the wall is a secret chamber containing an obsidian chest, a fancy chest, and the rune itself. Since I was already there, I went ahead and took down the archaeologer on adventure difficulty. This was a mandatory step to finally unlock the ultimate challenge, Apocalypse difficulty. The next up was Cacti Canyon, where the rune is also located near the end of the stage. At the gate where you have to retrieve the blue key, right by the fence with what looks suspiciously like a Starbucks cups, you'll find a palm tree on the left. Tagged beside it is a pressure plate. Activating it opens a passage directly behind the key's pedestal, leading straight to the rune. Finally, I headed to the Redstone Mines. The rune here is located in the second area where you task with rescuing villagers. If you look closely near one of the glowing redstone veins, you'll spot the pressure plate. One quick step on that and nearby wall slides away to reveal the next rune for the collection. The rune in the Fairy Forge is actually one of the easiest to grab since it's located right near the entrance. As soon as I moved past the initial mountain path and stepped into the forge itself, I spotted a lever positioned near the slumped over redstone golem. Flipping it reveals a hidden chamber nearby where the rune is waiting. The best part? You don't even have to finish the mission. Once rune is in your pocket, you can just head back to camp. The real struggle with this hunt is that most runes are tagged away at the very end of the level. Take the Saga Swamp for example. You have to defeat the boss first, and then right near the exit you'll find a stone pillar. There is a hidden slab at its base, and activating it opens a secret passage directly across from the pillar. As you probably guessed, that's where the rune is hidden. My penultimate rune was stashed into the Desert Temple. At the point where you're blocked by a set of locked doors, you have to hunt down the golden key. The key is just to the right of the gate, but if you were off to the left side of the room, you will find an unremarkable lever tagged behind a palm tree. Pulling that opens the door to the second to last rune in my collection. The final rune was waiting for me in high block holes. After clearing the interior section where you hunt for the key, I found an unlit torch tucked into the corner wall. One quick turn of the torch and nearby doors slid open, revealing the last rune for my collection. Strangely enough, the game doesn't give you an achievement for collecting all the runes, but they are a requirement for something much bigger. I headed back to camp, entered the Great Hall, and placed all the runes into the wall at the far end. The wall gave way to the hidden room containing 2 obsidian chests, which likely dropped the soul lantern I needed, and the map to a legendary secret level. We'll be checking that out a bit later. My next goal, however, was an achievement that would have been a disaster without a partner. I actually had to recruit my wife to pull this off. The challenge is incredibly specific. Complete 2 ancient hunts and 2 daily trails in 2-player co-op on the second day of the month. So after waiting patiently until December 2nd, 2025, my wife and I sat down to tackle this one together. We started with the daily trails, and right out of the gate it was brutal. We rolled high block holes, which is already headache to the Royal Guards, but the added trial modifiers made it almost unbearable. Our strategy basically turned into taking turns dying and reviving each other. In co-op, you don't lose a life as long as one person stays standing, but if you both go down at once, which has happened to us twice, it counts. We finished the cruise level literally on our last legs. Learning from that near disaster, I swallowed my pride and dropped the difficulty for the second trial. It doesn't avoid the achievement, and it turned the next mission in the jungle into a peaceful afternoon stroll. Mobs were flying off the screen with a single hit, and we cleared the first half of the achievement without any further drama. Then we moved to the engine hunts, which is a bit of a sore object for many players. This mechanic was added late in the game's development for the hardcore grinders looking for gilded gear. To even start a hunt, you have to sacrifice your own equipment and enchantment levels, and once they're gone for good. Each item carries specific runes, and the combination you sacrifice determines which ancient mobs might spawn. These are essentially powered-up bosses that drop the best loot in the game, but there is a catch. They might not show up at all if they find your offering insufficient. To fix that, you have to gamble experience levels to boost the spawn rate. There is one legendary achievement tied to this grind that is easily the rarest in the game, but we'll get to that headache later. Essentially, these hunts take you through the nether-themed location where the standard loot has been replaced entirely with gold ingots. This gold is the only currency for trading with the piglin merchant for gilded gear or rerolling your enchantments, so my wife and I got straight to work. Our first boss was a massive ancient spider. It managed to catch us off guard and take us down a few times, but we eventually scrambled to win. It's important to remember that in ancient hunts, the bosses are the only source of gilded gear. You won't find it anywhere else. Occasionally, inside of a boss room, you stumble upon bastions filled with gold chests, but you have to fight through the cramped, narrow corridors to get to them. We finished the first run, and as a reward, the final chest gave us 30 gold ingots, the standard payout for completing a hunt. For our second run, my offering summoned the ancient necromancer. Visually, these bosses looks like their standard counterparts, but they come packed with dangerous enchantments and a small army of minions. To be safe, I keep the difficulty dialed down. These enemies are absolute tanks. Even on a lower setting, they're incredibly tough to bring down. But we handled him without any major issues, and with that, the second half of the challenge was complete. Since I mentioned the rarest and the most difficult achievement in the game, I should probably explain what makes it such a nightmare. The task is this: during ancient hunts, bring a wolf, a bat, and a soul entity to visit familiar locations. Sounds cryptic, right? The problem is that the game randomly generates the biomes for each hunt, and no one is 100% sure if your sacrificed items influence which locations appear. The developers have stayed silent on these mechanics, so it's mostly a game of luck. If the right location spawns, you're in business. If not, you just have to reset and try again. During my second run, Lady Luck was on my side. I rolled the first biome, and even better, a specific cave filled with wolves spawned within it. I quickly equipped my tasty bone artifact and summoned a wolf inside the cave. There was a one step down. My wolf had visited a familiar place, leaving only the bat and the soul entity to go. At that moment, I felt like the luckiest player alive. I thought the stars had aligned and the rest would be easy. I was very mistaken. On the bright side, finishing that second hunt meant my wife and I had officially completed 2 trails and 2 hunts on the second day of the month. The back-to-back achievement popped, and we could finally check that time-sensitive headache off the list. My wife and I were so fired up after our first success that we keep pushing through the ancient hunts. We were hunting for the next piece of the legendary achievement, the bat. To pull this off, you have to wear the spelunker armor, which spawns a bat companion. If you're lucky, a specific cave section will generate during the hunt that is already home to the other bats. I wasn't completely lucky, as the wild bats were tucked away in a corner facing the other way, but it still counted as a visit in them. I brought my bat to their hangout, ticked that box, and felt like the achievement was practically in the bag. I thought the soul entity would be a done deal. I couldn't have been more wrong. Still, the grind continued. During our runs, we encountered 2 more ancient bosses. We managed to take them down, though I'll admit I hit the dirt a few times myself, but that's a story for another day. Most of the time, we were just stumbling into treasure rooms filled with gold. I eventually stockpiled over 500 gold ingots, which popped the Piglin's best friend achievement. With my pockets full of gold, I headed straight to the enchantsmith. I was desperately trying to roll the overcharge enchantment for my bow. If you haven't used it, overcharge is insane. It lets you charge your shot up to 4 times for a single arrow. dealing massive quadruple damage. Spoiler alert, the enchantsmith was not in given mood. I didn't get the enchantment I wanted, but after burning through my gold for the 3 rerolls, I did at least unlock the customized customer achievement. From there, the cycle continued. Sacrifice item, start a hunt, repeat. At one point, I even offered up my Bassinest artifact, the one that summons bees. A move I would come to regret deeply later on. Despite the mistake, my subsequent runs were actually quite successful. It felt like we were encountering new ancient bosses at almost every mission, and they were simply no match for our combined strength. However, despite clearing boss after boss, the game was holding out on me. To finish that final elusive step of the rarest achievement, I needed to reach the Soul Sand Wally biome. But no matter how many items I sacrificed or how many hunts were started, the specific location refused to spawn. I was dominated every boss the game threw at me, yet I was still at the mercy of the map's random generation. With the arrival of the new week, the tower layout reset, so I decided to head back in. This was already my 3rd unique tower, and I was starting to realize that 100% completion was going to take a lot longer than I anticipated. I was originally worried about the Tower Tourist achievement, which requires you to visit 15 different biomes within the tower, thinking that RNG would take months to cycle through them. To my surprise, that one was actually a breeze. Within those 3 weeks, I had already seen enough variety to pop the trophy. The next one, however, was a different story. The achievement Alpha Centurion tells you to defeat 100 tower guards. For some reason, I immediately pictured the royal guards from the high block halls. I spent so much time farming them, certain I'd cleared 100, but the notification never showed up. After some frantic googling, I realized my mistake. It's talking about the specific Tower Centurions, which are a rare random spawn. I was shocked to realize that in 3 weeks of playing, I hadn't encountered a single one. I felt defeated. At that rate, it would take a year to finish the game. But then, on floor 27 of the current tower, he appeared, the one and only Centurion. I did some quick math. It took me 40 minutes to reach that floor. To kill 100 of them naturally, I'd have to spend 66 hours of pure grinding. Did I do that? Absolutely not. I used a tactical restart trick. I'd enter the floor, slay the Centurion, immediately exit to the main menu and reload. I repeated that loop 99 times. It took about an hour and a half of constant reloading, but when the achievement finally popped, I was overwhelmed with the pure joy. I've never been so happy to see a notification in my life. At one point, I got the itch to build an experience farm. Yes, even in the game like this, it's actually possible. You just need a few specific tools: companion artifacts, a totem of regeneration, and armor with the final shelled enchantment. I headed to Pumpkin Pastures, specifically the drawbridge section where you have to flip 2 levers to proceed. As long as you don't flip those levers, the mobs will spawn infinitely. It's the perfect spot for an AFK farm. I stood right in the center, summoned my wolf and llama, and just waited. The logic was simple. My companions would slay the monsters, and the monsters would slowly chip away at my health. Whenever my HP dropped below 25%, Final Shout would trigger, automatically activating all my artifacts and ignoring their cooldowns, healing me back up and resummoning any fallen pets. All I had to do was walk away and go about my business. I did have to check back occasionally to loot the floor, mostly because a massive pile of items can actually crash the game. In the end, the idea was a bit silly. After several hours, I'd only gained 6 levels, but it was a fascinating experiment. I'd never tried an automated farm in a dungeon crawler before, and it was fun to see the mechanics work in my favor for once. Ultimately, I managed to grind out the exact number of levels and enchantment points I needed for the next achievement. I probably could have done this sooner, but I've been dumping all my points into the ancient hunts to boost my boss spawn rates. To pull this off, I took a crossbow and temporarily maxed out all 3 of its enchantment slots to level 3. Once I equipped it alongside my already maxed sword and armor, the maxed out and geared up achievement finally popped. The requirements is simple: have all 3 gear slots filled with items that have 3 level 3 enchantments, but finding the right balance of points can be tricky. Of course, as soon as the notification cleared, I immediately salvaged the crossbow to get all these enchantment points back. It was quick in and out mission just to check the box. To keep the momentum going, I started speedrunning the Soggy Swamp. As I mentioned earlier, it's one of the shortest missions in the game, making it the perfect place to farm raid captains. I still needed to clear 9 missions with their banners to finish that specific achievement, but since grinding the same level repeatedly can get a bit boring, I decided to combine business with pleasure and knock out another trophy at the same time. I dropped my main armor off to the blacksmith for upgrades and swap into the set with the Death Barter enchantment. At level 3, this enchantment saves you from death, as long as you've collected 50 emeralds during that specific mission. Keep in mind, it doesn't use your total bank of emeralds, only the ones you pick up while playing the level, which are tracked in the top left corner of your screen. To speed up the process, I equipped the bow with the Prospector enchantment. This passively boosts the drop rate of emeralds from every enemy you defeat, even if you aren't actually using the bow to kill them. As soon as I hit 50 emeralds, I just stood still and let monsters take me out. The enchantment instantly consumed the emeralds, popped a protective barrier, and kept me in the fight. I farm up another 50 emeralds, repeated the trick, and just like that, the repeat customer enchantment was mine. With that out of the way, I finished off the raid captain and exited the level. Since I had been grinding for the Centurion kill solo late into the night, my wife and I didn't actually finish that tower run together. Next day, feeling refreshed and full of energy, we jumped back in, fought our way to the summit and faced off against a new boss, the Wildfire. This is the legendary mob that lost the 2017 mob vote, and he's quite a challenge. Since we were running to the tower on Apocalypse difficulty, defeating him secured the Indomitable achievement. This time, I didn't use any restart tricks. I straight played and built my character using only the rewards the Tower Keeper offered. With the tower conquered, I turned my attention to one of the easiest, if a bit of repetitive achievements in the game. I needed a second player for this one, so I recruited my wife again. The goal for the life of the party is to revive your partner 20 times on the battlefield. Our strategy was simple. My wife stood there taking damage until she went down, and I jumped in to bring her back to life. We repeated this heroic cycle until achievement finally popped. It wasn't the most glorious way to win, but a win is a win. Even with the tower behind me, I stay focused on my raid captain grind. I keep replaying the Soggy Swamp, taking down the captains and snatching up their banners to crank up the difficulty. It wasn't a complicated process, but it was a bit of a shame the game doesn't let you stack multiple banners to speed up the achievement. You have to finish the mission with at least one active, 10 separate times. After my 10th run, the Bad Omen Good Loot achievement finally popped. But that was far from the end of the road. Ahead of me lay the brand new location of the Hidden Depth DLC. The first stop was Coral Rise. As soon as I dove in, I decided to tackle the Save Your Breath achievement, which requires you to survive for 60 seconds without oxygen. Since every level in this DLC is underwater, you're constantly hunting for bubble columns or air potions to keep from drowning. I figured I could just brute force the timer by using a few totem of regeneration to out-heal the drowning damage. However, I quickly realized I misread the ocean. The damage tick from drowning was way higher than my totems could handle, and my health bar was vanishing faster than I could replenish it. The solution turned out to be much more simpler than I thought. I just needed to dress for the occasion. I equipped a set of a turtle armor, which provides a 35% damage reduction and, more importantly, a 25% boost to all incoming healing. My next attempt was Walk in the Park. I swam away from the air bubbles until my oxygen meter hit 0 and the drowning damage kicked in. With the armor's buff active, I dropped my totem of regeneration, and this time the healing finally managed to keep pace with the damage. I watched the clock, endured the suffocation for a full minute, and the Save Your Breath achievement finally popped. It's a lot easier to hold your breath when you're built like a tank. As I pushed deeper into the DLC, the mission started to follow the similar pattern, but the constant scramble for air made them surprisingly stressful. You have to keep one eye on the enemies and the other on your oxygen meter at all times. Fortunately, bubble columns are scattered almost everywhere, but it still keeps you on your toes. Eventually, you're given a conduit. If you carry it over your head, it provides a constant supply of oxygen for you and any nearby teammates. The catch? You can use your bow or throw consumables while holding it. Instead, you're restricted to throwing a trident, which acts like a TNT but calls down a lightning strike after a short delay. The mission didn't end with a traditional boss fight. Instead, we reached a massive monument and were ambushed by a mini-boss, the Ancient Guardian. He wasn't too difficult to handle, but I did run into the one major setback. The secret level map failed to spawn in my first run. I had to repeatedly restart the level to find it. The silver lining was that because I had to fight through so many mobs to check the spawn point, I racked up enough experience to enchant a fully gilded weapon with 2 level 3 enchantments. This officially unlocked the seriously overpowered achievement. Even though this weapon was just temporary substitute while the blacksmith was upgrading my main gear, it really saved my skin. Finally, luck turned in my favor, and a cave entrance appeared near the start of the map. After fighting through a horde of enemies and navigating a platforming section using giant shells like pistons, I secured the map and unlocked the secret location. Since I had what I came for, I just quit to the menu. There was no need to finish the rest of the level. I decided to save the secret level for later and dove straight into Abyssal Monument, the final mission of the DLC. Your goal here is to navigate the sprawling ocean monument and confront something not quite ordinary. This place isn't just big, it's absolutely massive, even compared to the Desert Temple. It's a long trek, but the level design keeps it interesting, even throwing a puzzle your way that's much easier to solve if you're playing with a partner. At one point, just when you think you've reached the exit, the game pulls the rock out from under you. The floor begins to collapse, sending you into the freefall. It's a great surprise the first time you see it, but a word of warning, this section is incredibly laggy. As the blocks fall, your falling speed increases, and if the game's physics hiccup, it might register as a lethal fall from a great height. It happens almost every time a new layer of blocks gives way. Throughout the mission, keep your eyes peeled for the main boss, a colossal ancient version of the Guardian. He'll be watching you from the shadows, making you think a fight is imminent, but the game is just toys with you. The real battle doesn't start until he literally smashes through the wall to ambush you. The fight is tricky because once he hits certain health milestones, he becomes immortal and retreats behind a barrier, summoning waves of regular and ancient guardians to do his dirty work. After a long, grueling battle on high difficulty, I finally took him down and secured the Turn the Tide achievement. As it turns out, the standard Apocalypse difficulty wasn't the ceiling. There's also Apocalypse Plus. To unlock it, I had to take down the Archaeologer yet again, this time on regular Apocalypse mode. My gear was more than up to the task, though I definitely noticed a massive spike in the number of Illagers guarding the castle. The boss fight itself was pretty straightforward, aside from a close call at the very end where his laser beams almost sent me back to the checkpoint. After defeating him for the third time, I unlocked the new tier and popped the High Treason achievement. To make things even better, the final bit of experiments pushed my Cessna adventure rank to 25, securing the Trendsetter achievement as well. However, there was a slight catch. I realized after the credits rolled that I hadn't actually set the difficulty high enough to trigger the next level of Apocalypse Plus. I had to gear up and run the entire castle one more time just to be sure. On the second attempt, I made sure the settings were maxed out, and after another successful boss kill, the game kindly informed me that the new difficulty tier was officially unlocked. I needed this new difficulty tier for two main reasons. First, for the achievement itself, and second, because I had to beat the secret level on this exact setting. So I jumped straight into the Radiant Ravine. Honestly, this level is gorgeous. It feels like a genuine deep sea wall. Since no sunlight reaches down here, the whole place is illuminated by glowing corals and sea lanterns, giving it a surprisingly peaceful, almost romantic vibe. But let's not forget why I was really there, to knock out 3 achievements in one go. For the first one, I had to find a very specific hidden area. At first glance, it just looks like a dead end, but if you jump onto a leech and scale up to a second one, you can slip right into a secret cave. Naturally, there is a small army of mobs waiting inside, but the real prize is at the back of the cave and not the conduit. The challenge is to carry this thing almost to the very end of the level to drop it in another hidden spot. So there I was, pushing through the horse with the conduit held high above my head. By the way, this mission actually reminded me a lot of the Panda Rescue in the Jungle DLC. Here your objective is to save turtles trapped in these metal cages. The game never outright explains who captured them, but I bet they were being hoarded for their scutes, either to brew turtle power potions or to craft that exact turtle armor I used earlier. Just my personal theory though. There is one more crucial detail about this location. It's the only place in the game where you can find the glow squid, and you actually need this guy for 2 different achievements. The second I spotted one, I yanked it towards me with the fishing rod artifact to unlock gun fishing. To get this trophy, you have to reel in every single type of aquatic mob in the DLC, and the glow squid was the final name on my checklist. Just a quick heads up if you try this, mini bosses don't count, mostly because the game won't even let you hook them. The second achievement is hilarious callback to the infamous Minecraft mob vote, where the astrologer lost out to the glowing squid. It was time to help him get his revenge. I equipped the Ice Wand artifact, which summons a massive crushing block of ice, and you guessed it, drop it right on the glowing squid's head. Boom! Iceologer's revenge complete. It was absolute poetic justice, but I didn't have time to sit around and celebrate. I was still a long way from the end of the level, so I scooped the conduit back up and pressed on. This location is so incredibly massive that at one point we wandered into a completely basically dry cave with no water at all. We decided to explore it anyway, which almost turned out to be a fatal mistake. The moment I hit a dead end, gate slammed shut behind me and mobs started pouring in. It was an ambush. There were some seriously heavy hitters in there, and I ended up going down. But here was the real problem. When I died, I dropped the conduit inside the arena. Because the gates were locked until the ambush was cleared, I couldn't get back inside to retrieve it or finish the fight. It looked like a total softlock, meaning my only option would be to restart the entire level from scratch. Luckily, we had a trick up our sleeve, the lightning rod artifact. We managed to cheese the fight by standing safely behind the locked gate and calling down lightning strikes on the mobs until the arena was clear. It was a seriously close call, and replaying that entire level was absolute last thing I wanted to do. But thankfully our backup plan worked. With the ambush cleared, it was finally time to return the conduit to its rightful place. As I mentioned earlier, this destination is also completely hidden. The entrance is stacked away near flowing lava, just behind a wall of magma blocks, so it takes some careful maneuvering to get inside. The area itself is incredibly eerie. In the background of the ravine, there are these giant villager statues that actually track your movements, summoning levitating bridge blocks right in front of you as you walk. It's a super creepy detail. Naturally, a welcome party of mobs was waiting on the other side and instantly wiped me out. Thankfully, my wife clutched up and revived me, allowing us to finally slot the conduit into place and proudly claim the Lost Power achievement. There was no traditional boss fight at the end of the level, just one final ambush, which we cleared without breaking a sweat. The mission officially wrapped up as soon as we pulled the trident out of the stone, and just like that, the glow and behold achievement popped. As a final little exit sequence, a massive lava geyser erupted and launched us right to the top. But the grind wasn't over. Now that I had the Apocalypse Plus difficulty unlocked, my next step was to reply the Treetop Tangled mission. My goal was to secure the Treetop Untangled achievement, because clearly the developers couldn't resist making a little pun with the names. Since I've already showcased this level before, I won't bore you with the details again. I breezed through the mission, and even though I wiped once on the boss, it didn't matter. The achievement was in my bag. With that out of the way, I pivoted to some of the simpler non-DLC achievements that I had somehow put off until now. But before leaving the ocean entirely, I had one final Sea-themed challenge to finish. To knock this one out, I dropped the difficulty down to the absolute minimum. The goal was straightforward: pick up a trident and use an explosive lightning strike to eliminate 10 targets at once, exactly like a block of TNT. It was a piece of cake. I grabbed my first trident, kited a massive group of mobs into a tight cluster, and chucked the weapon right into the center of the crowd. Because the difficulty was set so low and the trident's damage scales based on my actual gear power, the blast instantly vaporized the entire pack. Just like that, the Seafood Skewer achievement was complete. For my next target, I needed to equip a highly specific loadout from the Jungle Awakens DLC: the Ocelot armor, the Corrupted Seeds artifact, and the whip for my melee weapon. Since there is no dedicated jungle bow in the game, it doesn't matter what range weapon you use, but to be absolutely safe, I unequipped everything else, so I was strictly wearing jungle gear. Fully geared up, I headed into the game's ultimate secret mission, the level with no name, known only as question marks. This is the hidden zone we unlocked earlier by gathering all those hidden runes. If you're fond of a classic action RPGs, you'll immediately catch the Easter egg here. Just like the legendary secret cow level in Diablo 2, this entire map is swarming with the unbelievable number of hostile cows, or in this case, mushrooms. After fighting my way through the massive herds, I reached the final boss arena to face the boss, the mushroom monstrosity. As soon as I landed the final blow and defeated it while wearing my full jungle set, the Jungle Fungus achievement popped. Next up was my least favorite level, Cacti Canyon. The challenge: beat the entire thing in under 5 minutes. This is notoriously difficult because the map is incredibly long and filled with mandatory ambushes that act as massive time sinks. To pull this off, I put together a pure speedrun build, equipping the Boots of Swiftness, Deathcap Mushroom, and the Ghost Cloak. Ideally, running 3 pairs of boots would be the ultimate strategy, but I only had 1 in my inventory. It didn't matter though. By carefully rotating my artifact cooldowns, I managed to sprint past almost every enemy. A forced ambush near the end definitely made me sweat and threw off my pacing, but I crossed the finish line at exactly 4 minutes and 41 seconds, unlocking the Hot-Footed Hero achievement. But the race wasn't over. I jumped straight into the Desert Temple, which has an even higher time limit, under 4 minutes. This one is the trickier because it includes both an unskippable ambush and a boss fight. To ensure I didn't lose precious seconds, I cranked the difficulty all the way down. I cleared the ambush, literally one-shot the boss, and bolted for the exit, clocking in at 3 minutes and 50 seconds. It was a close call, but I successfully secured the Desert Dynamo achievement. Think we're done? not even close. Next up, I had to clear the lower temple secret level on Apocalypse difficulty with the Desert Rabbit pet equipped. Luckily, I already had this little guy from hitting rank 13 in the seasonal adventure. The tricky part was the difficulty requirement, meaning the mobs were hitting hard. But there is a thing, nobody said I actually had to fight them. The rabbit is purely cosmetic and doesn't help in combat anyway, so I just ignore the enemies and speedrun the map. I breezed through it in about 3 minutes, popping the adorable Explorer achievement. Honestly, the hardest part of this challenge was just grinding the battle pass to unlock the rabbit in the first place. But the speedrunning didn't stop there. For the next achievement, I had to beat Creeper Woods on Apocalypse difficulty without defeating a single mob, a true pacifist run. Since the strategy was basically identical to the last achievement, my speed artifact loadout came in a clutch. I even completely unequipped my weapon just to guarantee I wouldn't accidentally swing at anything. I have to admit, there is something oddly satisfying about just zooming past massive hordes of enemies without a care in the world. Even though there wasn't a time limit on this one, I managed to cross the finish line in just 2 minutes and 40 seconds, successfully unlocking Creeper in the Woods. For the next 2 achievements, I headed straight back to the secret mushroom level, because enemy density there is off the charts. It's the perfect place for crowd control challenges. First up, I equipped the Bubble Bulb maxed out with the Person enchantment, an absolute must for this strategy. The goal was to trap 10 mobs in bubbles using a single shot. I guided a decent-sized herd together and let an arrow fly, but I didn't quite hit the threshold. Instead of getting frustrated, I just used the massive spawn rates to my advantage and rounded up an even bigger stampede of cows. My second shot was right on the money, and the Bubble Trouble achievement popped with flying colors. Without skipping a beat, I swept over to the new Spin Blade artifact. I needed this for my next challenge, hitting 70 targets with a single throw. Sounds impossible, right? I thought so too. But again, the mushroom level provided the ultimate target practice. I gathered a massive swarm around me, chucked the blade right down the middle, and then quickly repositioned, so it would carve through even more enemies on its return trajectory. Just like that, I secured the acclaimed Acrobat achievement. 70 targets hit with 1 projectile. Absolutely insane. Next up on the docket was another Island Realms DLC, Howling Peaks, and let me tell you, this one really tested my patience. I accidentally kicked things off with the Gauntlets of Gales. This level is basically a massive obstacle course packed with mini puzzles, where you have to perfectly redirect wind tunnels. On top of that, there are moving platforms you have to time perfectly, and narrow pipes you have to balance on to avoid plummeting into the abyss below. You really have to stay on your toes to survive the platform in here, but aside from the hazards, it's a pretty straightforward run. After that, I loaded into Windswept Peaks, which, whoops, was actually supposed to be the first level of the DLC. Here you slowly scale in a massive mountain to reach the temple at the summit. The absolute most frustrating part of this climb, the wind gusts. Random blasts of air constantly shoot out the walls, knocking you around and threatening to push you right off the edge. It gets incredibly annoying, so you have to stay hyper aware of your positioning. This level also introduced Ravagers. Prepare to see a lot of them, because they become a massive headache throughout this entire DLC. On a cooler note, I stumbled across a working elevator that operates completely without redstone. The game doesn't explain the lore behind this mysterious technology, but I kill to have something like this added to vanilla Minecraft. I also made sure to grab the secret map scroll hidden in this level, as we'll absolutely need for the later achievement. To finally wrap up the mission, I had to solve one last puzzle that used air currents instead of redstone dust to power the exit doors. Since there wasn't a boss waiting for me at the top, the end of the run was a total breeze. Without wasting any time, I jumped straight into the secret level, Colossal Rampart, where I had my eyes on a couple of new enchantments. For the first one, I had to equip the Updraft Tome artifact. In this DLC, the usual geomonsters are replaced by windcallers, annoying spellcasters who constantly summon updrafts to launch you into the air. The tome basically mimics their exact magic. My objective here was simply but tricky. Use the artifact to launch 3 windcallers into the air simultaneously. The hardest part wasn't the combat, it was just finding 3 of them at once and kiting them into the artifact's area of effect. Whenever a group of windcallers spawned, I carefully pick off the surrounding mobs and try to herd the casters together. Naturally, their AI makes them constantly scatter, but the second they finally clustered up, I popped the tome. A massive gusts of wind launched all 3 of them skyward, and just like that, I gave them a taste of their own medicine. For the next challenge, I had to swap my melee weapon to the Tempest Knife, the signature blade used by the Illagers in these mountains. The goal? eliminate 10 mountaineers in under 10 seconds. It's an incredibly tight DPS check, and honestly, I completely choked on my first attempt. To guarantee the win on round 2, I maxed out the knife's enchantments and brought in the heavily artillery, the Gang of Awakening and the Death Cup Mushroom. I guided about a dozen mountaineers into the tight circle, popped both artifacts, and turned into an absolute blur of damage. The combo shredded the entire group instantly, easily securing the Whirlwind Warrior achievement. I officially unlocked the Rampart Rampage achievement the second I cleared the level. Oddly enough, there wasn't even a final boss waiting for me at the end, but the real win happened right after the mission. My RNG came through and I got super lucky at the merchant, meaning to buy a second Gang of Weakening. Now I've got 2 of them in my inventory, but I actually need a full set of 3 to pull off a very specific achievement, but we'll get to that later. During this mission, I got the Emerald Gear Armor. Its level was pretty low, so I gave it to the blacksmith for upgrades and kept playing. The blacksmith counted 1 point only after I successfully finished the level, and I needed 3. You may ask, why did I need this armor? It's simple. I had to beat the daily 3rd level trial while wearing it. What's so special about this armor? It sometimes drops emeralds while you're moving, so all I did was rush through the level as fast as possible, trying not to fight anyone. In the end, the Dress for Success achievement was successfully unlocked. Later, I finally got around the last level of the Halloween Peaks DLC, called Gale Sanctum. It was a very long and pretty tough level, because all the puzzles, moving platforms, and windpipes were taken to the extreme this time. They were literally everywhere. The achievements here were no joke either. For the first one, I had to kill a Revenger and a Squall Golem with 5 seconds of each other. So my first idea was to gather a bunch of golems around me, but the problem was I walked right into an ambush. Monsters kept spawning one after another, and in this chaos, I accidentally killed all my golems. Luckily, just around the corner, another golem was waiting. I spared him and just let him chase me. Surprisingly, after walking a couple of blocks, I ran into the Revenger. I instantly one-shotted him with an arrow, quickly finished off the golem, and the Giant Slayer achievement popped. The main problem with this level is that there is once again a huge element of RNG. At a certain point, you run out of the sanctuary and head down the street. If all the planets align and you get lucky, you'll find a passage back into the sanctuary at the end of the street, where you need to complete a specific objective. But as you can see, the RNG gods weren't on my side today, so I just moved on. We'll come back to this later. Eventually, I reached the final boss, the Tempest Golem. I'd say the fight with him is pretty different from the rest. He actually shields his health bar and stays immortal until you destroy the 2 pillars that keep spawning enemies. While you're doing that, he shoots out gusts of wind that launch you into the air, and tries to swat you with his hands. Plus, after a successful attack, he summons even more regular Squall Golems. It's nothing too crazy, to be honest, but it's definitely a fun fight. This is also where I had to grab a specific achievement. I needed to defeat him with 4 pets active at the exact same time. How do you pull that off with only 3 artifact slots? Easy. I summoned the wolf, the iron golem, and the llama using artifacts, and relied on my axe for the bees. It had an enchantment that spawned bees whenever I attacked, so I waited until the boss had just a silver of health left, popped all my animal summons at once, and went for the final blow. My bee actually spawned right at the last second, but I still managed to finish the boss off, and the herd mentality achievement heroically popped. I didn't have to wait long for the next one either. Right as I finished the level, I unlocked another achievement, Taming the Storm. And with that, we officially beat the DLC. But there were still a few achievements left to mop up. Remember that spot where the doors were supposed to be? Well, I did some digging online, and people had all sorts of theories about how to activate them. A lot of players agreed that the doors only spawn if you don't kill a single llama throughout the entire level, but none of that worked for me, even though I spared every single one of them during my run. In the end, I just had to restart the level and pray to the RNG gods, and they finally answered, but only for my 4th attempt. The doors were actually open and I was able to enter the Temple of the Llama. Yes, that's actually what it's called. It's packed with llamas, complete with a massive llama statue right in the middle. My task was simple: solve an easy puzzle and use the windpipes to push a hay bale over the statue. Basically, it looks like you're feeding it. In return, it drops a fancy chest and the Woolly Wisdom achievement pops. Nothing complicated, but again, it all all comes down to RNG. The next achievement was exactly the same story, but at least this time I was somewhat in control. I was back on the grind for the ancient bosses. Just as a quick refresher, I had to kill 15 unique bosses. That's basically what I was doing here, though I only had 3 left to kill. I knocked out the rest of screen because I really didn't want to drag you through the ancient hunt 10 different times. The main issue with this achievement is the gear. Every single time you have to sacrifice specific items just to spawn a new boss, instead of an old one. But eventually I managed to take down 15 different ancient bosses, and the Ancient Hunter achievement was mine. But unfortunately, my ancient hunt wasn't over yet. You guessed it, it's time for another rare achievement tied straight to RNG. Do you know how many times I've encountered the Souls and Wally biome in about 18 ancient hunts? Exactly 0 times. So I keep that all. By the way, it's worth mentioning that on top of daily trails, the game also has weekly challenges. You can find them in the Adventure Hub, and they basically help you level up your seasonal adventure. Honestly, I just ended up completing them in the background without even realizing it. They weren't anything crazy, just stuff like killing 3 Endermen with arrows or gathering a certain amount of gold or emeralds. Basically, you'll knock them out just by playing the game normally. Since they reset every week, right in the middle of my endless grind for the Souls and Wally biome, I managed to finish 10 of these weekly challenges and unlock the Gold Dragon achievement. That was a nice little bonus. I wish I could say the same about the Ancient Hunt though, because the biome was still nowhere to be found. But then it hit me. Maybe the game wasn't spawning this biome because I hadn't actually unlocked its base location in the main game yet. The thing is, the Flames of the Nether DLC added the Nether to the game, and in it, the Souls and Wally biome is actually a secret mission. You have to find the map for it by playing through the other levels. So I decided it was finally time to dive into this DLC. The first mission was the Nether Waste biome. The coolest part of this level was definitely the massive destroyed drill, which I'm pretty sure is made of netherite. It looks absolutely sick. Other than that, the level was pretty straightforward, and after finishing it, I unlocked the Nether Being Better achievement. Right afterwards, I jumped into the Warp Forest. Honestly, I think this is the most beautiful out of all the Nether levels. It has a vibrant color palette, glowing vegetation, and overall, it's just really nice to look at. But more importantly, this is where I found the map for the secret Crimson Forest level. Yeah, it turns out most of the levels in this DLC have to be unlocked by finding hidden maps inside other missions. They're usually tucked away right near the exit. The exact same thing happened in the next biome, the Basalt Deltas, where I managed to grab another secret map, this time for the Nether Fortress. The fortress was an absolute massive level, and it was incredibly easy to get lost in there. There weren't any new secret maps hidden in this one though. I only ran into the Wildfire mini-boss once, but I took him down without any issues. The next level was the Crimson Forest. Honestly, I'd say it's the most visually intense level of them all. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but because of how insanely saturated the red is, at some point it felt like the whole screen was just blended into one giant red blur. But here's a really cool fact. The Crimson Forest is already a secret mission that we unlocked back in regular level, and inside this secret mission you can find the map for another secret mission, the infamous Souls and Wally. This is literally the only time in the entire game where this happens. As for the Souls and Wally itself, it's absolutely gorgeous. It's got these deep dark tones mixed with glowing blues that creates a really mesmerizing vibe. The main enemies you'll be dealing with here are piglins and wither skeletons. The only tricky part here is that wither skeletons are armed with both swords and bows, and every single hit inflicts the wither effect, so you really have to stay on your toes. Throughout the DLC, I ran into the Wildfire mini-boss multiple times. He's not specifically hard, but you have to break his shields first before you can actually deal any damage. On this level, I encountered my 10th one and took him down. And just like that, the Back From Whence You Came achievement popped. Weirdly enough, there was no main boss in this entire DLC. I mean, sure, there were mini-bosses like the Wildfire and the Gust, but that was it. It honestly feels like the devs just forgot to add one. Still, as soon as I beat the level, I unlocked another achievement, Trial by Fire. The requirement was super simple. I just had to beat all 3 secret Nether missions on Apocalypse difficulty, so literally just by playing through the story, I got this achievement basically for free. Of course, as soon as I warp up the DLC, I went straight back to the engine hunt. I was praying that this time I finally get lucky. Plus, some people online suggested sacrificing soul-related items, and since I had a ton of those, I started the grind again. You won't believe it, but almost immediately I got this soul sand wally biome. I was absolutely hyped. I started clearing the level, checking literally every single corner of the map, hoping to find that specific spot, but nope, nothing. Not only is the biome itself locked behind RNG, but the actual spawn of the achievement location is also RNG. It was soul crushing, but I didn't give up. After 5 more attempts, I actually found the biome again, and guess what? Nope, unlucky again. The location still didn't spawn. At that point, I was completely tilted. I just rage quit and didn't even touch the game for like 2 whole days. But there was no point in giving up so close to the finish line. So after a little break, I jumped back into Minecraft dungeons. It took another 8 ancient hunts before the Soul Sand Wally finally showed up again. This time, I kept my expectation at 0 and just pushed through the map, hoping for the best. Right near the end, I spotted a fancy chest and instantly knew this was the spot. I popped the artifact and just started running around like crazy. And it actually worked. The soul found its familiar location, and the rarest and honestly the most frustrating achievement, Homecoming, finally unlocked. That definitely gave me motivation back. Riding that high, I jumped straight into the final DLC, Echo and Void. There are only 2 levels here and no secret missions, so I obviously started with the End Wilds. I immediately equipped the Obsidian Claymore because I needed to grind out 1,000 kills on end mobs for another achievement. 2 birds, 1 stone. Honestly, I am not a huge fan of this weapon since it's incredibly slow, but the insanely damage completely makes up for it. Slip a crit enchantment on there and it's generally overpowered. The level itself is awesome. You're basically island hopping your way to the main island for the boss fight. If you look closely, you can actually see the boss stalking you in the background, watching your every move. You also run into shulkers here, and their projectiles hit you with levitation. But the cool part is that their shots actually trigger mechanisms, like opening gates or powering elevators. You can even find and equip a elytra on the ship. They don't take up an armor slot, so you can wear both at the same time. You can use them to fly, but the catch is you can only do it in specific areas where there are firework barrels, so it's heavily scripted, but still a fun mechanic. Finally, the end gateway was waiting for me at the end of the level, ready to teleport me further. I didn't waste any time and dove straight into the final level, the Broken Citadel, ready for the ultimate boss fight. But first, I wanted to knock out the few achievements, starting with the Diver's Dozen. The goal was to hit 12 enemies at once while flying with the elytra. It was not easy. My first 5 attempts completely failed. The problem wasn't grouping the enemies together, it was the attack itself. I couldn't figure out how to strike midair. Turns out there is a dedicated button for dive attack. Once I figured that out, on my 6th attempt, the achievement finally popped. Moving further into the level, the first part was pretty similar to the last mission. Just small islands packed with mobs. But things changed once I actually entered the Broken Citadel. I had to be extremely careful here because the place was crawling with shulkers. There is an achievement tied to them. Beat the entire level without taking a single hit from a shulker projectile. I played it super safe. I brought the totem of shielding to block their shots, sniped them from a distance, and even shot their projectiles out of the air with my bow. But eventually, I popped my shield a split second too late, and the projectile clipped me right as bubble formed. The no damage run was dead. But I decided to push through to the end anyway. Waiting for me at the end was the true final boss of the entire game, the vengeful Heart of Ender. It turns out the infamous Orb of Dominance was actually a piece of this thing all along. I had to fight the source of it all. The battle was intense. The Heart was constantly teleporting around, shooting pink projectiles, hitting its health bar in the depths of the end, and summoning minions. But eventually, I managed to defeat the offspring of the end itself and unlock the Heartbreaker achievement. Gotta love the developer pun there. Everyone back at the camp was thrilled and threw a massive party. But there was no time to rest for me. I still had 7 achievements left to mop up. Since I was still missing a few specific artifacts for the final achievements, I decided to max out my village merchant. To do that, I needed to rescue a total of 70 captive villagers. Luckily, I had already saved about half of them naturally during my playthrough, so I just just needed to speedrun the rest. I equipped 3 boots of swiftness all at once, loaded into the Creeper Woods level, and basically just zoomed past all the mobs for 3 decapitives. Since there are about 6 of them per run, it only took a few quick runs to unlock all 6 merchant slots. This significantly boosted my chances of finding that elusive third gang and the Buzzy Nest. As I mentioned earlier, I was buying up any missing gear and artifacts whenever I could. Sure, they could drop during missions, but buying them from vendors doubled my chances. So right after unlocking those final slots, I bought the wood quiver from the villager merchant and took a gamble on an artifact crate from the mystery merchant. It dropped the Vex enchant, an artifact that summons Vexes. To my absolute surprise, that was the very last item I needed. Without even planning it, the I need them all achievement unexpectedly popped. I was thrilled, but the grind wasn't over. I still desperately needed the third gang and the Buzzy Nest. So I dove right back into the Broken Citadel, determined to do no-hit Chalky run. The first part of the level is mostly just regular end mobs, so I kept swinging away with my Obsidian Claymore. And sure enough, I finally hit the 1000 kill milestone, and the end run achievement popped. I honestly thought it would take way longer, but since I still wasn't a fan of how slow that sword was, I instantly swapped back to a faster weapon, so I could actually dodge and move around. Unfortunately, that first attempt was doomed. Literally, the second I stepped into the Citadel, the very first shulker tagged me, run dead. But the next attempt was the one. I played it incredibly safe, sweating bullets the whole time. I was super nervous, but the second I crossed into the boss arena, a massive wave of relief hit me. I knew I was in the clear. I melted the boss with no problems, and the Take the High Road achievement was officially mine. Pro tip, by the way, you can actually cheese this achievement. If you take damage, you can just plug in a second controller for local co-op right at the end, and have a player 2 trigger the achievement instead. I felt like that was a bit too corny, so I did it legit. But hey, if you're struggling, feel free to use that trick. Remember when I said that the battle with an Archaeologer wasn't the last one? Well, I had to fight him again. But this time on Apocalypse plus 5 difficulty. It is an incredibly brutal challenge. We try to push through with our current gear, but literally from the very first hit, my wife and I got launched into the orbit. Clearly, we needed an upgrade. So naturally, I headed back to the tower to exploit that trick I mentioned earlier. This solved 3 problems at once. First, we could get some overpowered gear. Second, every time I left the floor, the merchants refreshed their inventory, so we could finally hunt down the artifacts I needed. And third, it leveled up my seasonal adventure. As a result, I walked out with a power level of 238 squid armor, and my wife grabbed the trident. And fortunately, I finally got my hands on that Buzzy Nest, which I had previously sacrificed for an ancient hunt. A decision I regretted 100 times over. And that elusive third gang of weakening. Armed to the teeth, we charged straight into the Archaeologer boss fight for the very last time. Let me tell you, the level was unforgiving. The mob density was the same, but the enemies hit like trucks and felt like a massive bullet sponges. But somehow we made it to the final boss without popping a single totem of undying. My wife absolutely melted the Archaeologer's first phase in just 3 hits with her trident, and the second phase took maybe 5. I was so relieved to finally be done with this boss. I was honestly sick of looking at him. But the post-apocalypse achievement successfully popped, and it felt amazing. To unlock the next achievement, I had to throw on some peeling armor. It has an awesome passive effect. Whenever you use a health potion, it instantly resets the cooldowns for all your artifacts. The objective here was to activate 6 guns of weakening within 5 seconds. Normally, with only 3 artifact slots, this is literally impossible. But here was the big brain play. I slotted in 3 guns, popped them all in 1 second, chucked the health potion to reset the cooldowns, and instantly spawned them again. Boom! The ear protection recommended achievement was done. Next up, it was time to abuse the Buzzy Nest. The goal was to have 15 bees active at the exact same time, so I equipped 3 nests, grabbed a melee weapon with bee enchantments and maxed it out. Then I dug through my inventory and found some armor that spawns bee whenever you roll. I maxed all of that out too, equipped my ultimate bee build and set off to grab my penultimate achievement. I started by spam rolling, dropped all the hives and just started wailing on the training dummy in the camp. For a second I thought it was bugged, the game just wasn't counting the bees. But right as the hive started to break and the bees were about to despawn, the notification finally popped. The ABBBBB achievement was mine. The name is absolutely ridiculous, but honestly, I was absolutely buzzing. All that was left was the final achievement. And this was the whole reason I had grinded the seasonal adventure particularly to the max. Hitting level 45 rewarded me with a brand new pet, the golden parrot. It's purely cosmetic. But my only task now was to equip it and simply beat the Gale Sanctum mission. Simple on paper, right? But the grind to get there was insane. Of course, I wasn't about to fight every single mob. I threw on my boots of swiftness and basically speedrun the entire level. I breezed through the mission with my golden body flying right beside me, and the moment I finished, the final achievement, Golden Gauntlet, finally popped. And with that, I had officially 100%ed Minecraft dungeons. It took me almost 60 hours of real-time gameplay and a ton of effort. Going into this, I honestly thought it'd be way faster. I mean, 140 achievements, piece of cake, right? Yeah, not quite. With so many of them locked behind a pure RNG, you're completely at the mercy of the game. But honestly, I loved it. I had an absolute blast playing the game and putting this massive video together. Writing a 34-page script is no joke. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, you are absolute legends. Thank you so much for sticking with me through this massive journey. Next up is going to be a complete deep dive into the storyline and lore of Minecraft dungeons. I purposely kept out of this video because that stuff deserves its own spotlight, without being buried under gameplay and achievement grinding. Let me know your thoughts on the game in the comments below, and tell me if you've snagged any of these crazy achievements yourself. I'll be reading them. While you wait for the next one, click on one of the videos on screen right now. They're just as good. And of course, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell so you don't miss a thing. See you soon as we keep discovering Minecraft dungeons in a whole new way.